He was once a quarterback, born into football royalty, a father who was a legend in the sport, and all signs pointed to him being the next big thing. But he sucked at quarterback. Yeah, so Jordan Knox couldn't throw the ball very well, but turns out that wasn't his calling anyway. Now, after spending 2 full seasons at receiver, the learning period was over. Now it was time to get serious. And after sophomore year, Jordan knew exactly what he needed to do. He was still trying to prove to his father that this switch was a shot worth taking. So now, deep in the offseason, with junior year coming fast, he committed to a grind unlike any other. Early mornings, late nights, no distractions, just him and the field. Sharpening his footwork, growing his route tree, and getting stronger. By the time the new year rolled around, we were looking at a version of Jordan Knox we'd never seen before. Jordan felt primed for a breakout year. The only question was, where? Cincinnati was fine, but it wasn't going to take him to the top, and that's exactly where he wanted to be. And for the first time ever, Jordan had options, but one program stood out above all the rest. So he grabbed his sunglasses, packed his swim trunks, got some sunscreen, inflated his beach ball, DM'd some models, and okay, you get the idea. He's headed to Miami.
Nothing to debate about when it comes to the weather. It is spot on perfect outside. Any rain, it is gone. It's going to just dissipate there and move on out of here.
Jordan was entering his junior year rated an 82 overall, ready to absolutely explode. His offseason transformation was no joke, and he was itching to show it off. From the moment he hit campus, the culture shock was undeniable. Cincinnati to Miami wasn't just a transfer, it's an entirely different planet. All of a sudden, he was getting approached with NIL deals, something that up until now felt completely foreign. And honestly, it felt good, maybe too good. He flashed in his first practice with the Hurricanes, and coach wasted no time rewarding him with a wide receiver 2 role. Now, you're probably thinking, what about his dad? What does Isaiah think of all this? Well, after the two came face to face at the end of last year, Jordan wasn't sure where that would leave them. A couple of texts here and there over the offseason, surface level stuff, but both of them were still dancing around the real issue. Isaiah still wasn't fully convinced his son wasn't wasting his time, but at least for now, he was done fighting it. It was progress. Slow, painful, quiet progress, but progress. But if you thought that meant he'd be in the stands screaming Jordan's name every week, you'd be pretty wrong. By the time the first game of the year rolled around, Jordan's mission was crystal clear. Solidify himself as a full-blown receiver, and in the process, finally secure his father's approval. The Hurricanes were opening the year at home against Utah, and seeing his team sitting in the top 15 felt surreal to Jordan. Talk about pressure. He lined up for the very first time as a Hurricane, found the soft spot in the coverage like he'd done 100 times last year, and the corner broke hard on the ball, leaped, and picked it off. First target of junior year, and it's intercepted. Welcome to Miami. That's when Jordan remembered the pressure, the stakes, the competition, all of it had been taken up a notch. But if his goals were going to pan out, one thing he couldn't do was shy away. So he got back up and hauled in a quick grab to get things moving. It was far from Odell's one-handed catch or the Minneapolis Miracle, but will somebody please tell Utah that, because now they're tripling him. For the first time, Jordan looked natural out there. His steps were fluid, his hands were smooth, and the ball just found him. Working over the middle was his bread and butter, but anything outside of the hashes or along the boundaries still left a lot to be desired. Deep balls were still a long shot, and working the sideline was still not as crisp as you'd like to see. So Jordan stuck to what worked, but he was finding out pretty quickly he could no longer afford to be a one-dimensional receiver. In the final seconds of the third quarter, trailing by 10, Jordan navigated space, found where he needed to be, and reeled one in to move Miami down to the 12-yard line. His junior debut, and he'd already eclipsed 100 yards, but he wasn't finished. Utah tried to stick a linebacker on him, and Jordan took full advantage. He ripped up the seam and walked untouched into the end zone. But despite the stat line and despite the touchdown, Miami just couldn't pull it out, falling to 0-1 to open the year. Losses always stung, and no matter how well he played, Jordan couldn't find it in himself to be happy about it. But after the game, as Jordan left the locker room, he experienced something no amount of football could ever prepare you for: an encounter with a woman.
Hey Jordan, great game today.
Meet Chloe, Miami cheerleader and the first girl to ever make Jordan Knox genuinely nervous. He was flustered, even more so when she said they should hang out sometime. Jordan tried to play it cool, but he lost that battle pretty quickly because now he's lying awake thinking about where to take her when really his mind should have been elsewhere. Miami was back in action the following week looking for a win to get back on track. Jordan took the field, and with Chloe on the sideline, he was ready to move like Jim in basketball. He got right to work, immediately moving the chains for the Hurricanes. Then again, racing off the line, cutting across the middle, hauling in a huge catch downfield. He took a big shot, popped right back up, and hit a first down celly. But the drive stalled, and as Jordan jogged to the sideline, he knew he had to show up in a big way. Then it was his teammate streaking down the field, catching a beautiful throw in stride for a walk-in touchdown. Miami reclaims the lead, and Jordan just watched. Genuinely happy for his guy, but yeah, he wanted that one. He smiled and reminded himself that his time was coming. So he kept doing the dirty work, helping the offense chunk their way down the field, and when he finally got his shot at an end zone ball, it was just ever so slightly overthrown. But Jordan Knox, of all people, was not about to complain about a bad throw. He came right back with a big catch and run, moving Miami into prime scoring position. And when he lined up again, his route set a quick out to the sideline, but Jordan saw something else. He hit the seam, looked in the ball, and walked untouched into the end zone. Another 100-yard performance, and Miami was back in the win column, avoiding that 0-2 slide. After the game, when Chloe hit him up, singing his praise, Jordan, the humble king he is, downplayed it. After all, he was still learning new things each and every week, but Chloe wasn't having it.
Jordan, come on, you're an amazing receiver, one of the best I've seen.
Her words touched Jordan in a way he didn't expect. Pretty soon he was staying up late to chat, blowing off study sessions to hang out, and fighting just to stay awake in class. But even with all the distractions, the season wasn't going anywhere. In fact, it was heating up in a big time way. Week 3 brought possibly the toughest test of Jordan's entire college career. South Carolina, his dad's alma mater, and coincidentally, the first school to reject him back in high school. So yeah, this wasn't just another regular season game for Jordan. In front of him was a real chance. A chance to show out against his dad's former squad, knowing he'd be watching, and a chance to show the Gamecocks the caliber of player they passed on. As Jordan took the field, he could feel every bit of the nerves. He'd be lying if he said he'd been giving football his full attention lately, and part of him feared he might not be ready for a game like this. And early on, the writing was on the wall. His routes were off, and all that separation he'd been creating the past few weeks was nowhere to be seen. He reeled in a quick grab, trying to build momentum, but when the QB looked his way again, the ball bounced right off his hands. Jordan looked up and watched the drop replay on the stadium screens, and that's when he felt it. Embarrassment. He knew he needed to lock in, but South Carolina wasn't letting that happen. He won a route working toward the back corner of the end zone, but took a monster hit as he went up for it. Jordan was taking a beating, and as he lay on the turf, the words of every doubter played in his head, the ones that had been waiting, hoping to see exactly this. Then he took a beat and reminded himself he may never be Jerry Rice, but the one thing he will always do is get back up. So, still feeling the shock from the hit, he lined back up, worked through traffic, and found his very first touchdown of the afternoon. The crowd roared, his teammates went crazy, and those voices in his head faded away. He found a few more catches, but the Gamecocks didn't let up for a second. Every rep was a battle, and Jordan was fighting more than just corners out on that field. Then he ripped up the seam, hauled in another tough grab, and shot the U to the stands. The fans lost it, and Jordan felt untouchable. Now over 100 yards for the third consecutive week, he only continued to climb, hauling in another one in the end zone. Hard Rock Stadium erupted, and Knox chants echoed through the arena. Jordan was stunned. He'd heard those chants hundreds of times before, for his dad, for his cousins, but now they were for him. In that moment, two things became clear. One, Miami was dominant, and two, the nation may have just gotten its first real look at who Jordan Knox actually was. Post-game, Chloe ran up and latched onto his arm.
Let's get out of here, let's go celebrate.
Back at his locker, gathering his things, Jordan felt his phone buzz. It was his father, calling for the first time all season. Jordan stared at the name on the screen for what felt like an eternity.
Jordan, come on, let's go.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
That night, Jordan leaned fully into his newfound stardom. VIP sections, non-stop selfies, bottle service, the whole package. The parties he used to dread had become a nightly ritual, and this new life was intoxicating. Somewhere in between all the parties, all the Chloe, and the NIL shoots, everything else fell to the wayside. But it was all about to come crashing back in a way Jordan could never have prepared for. What do you mean I can't suit up this week? So I skipped a few classes, who cares? Y'all need me out there. There was nothing any coach, any advisor, or even Jordan himself could do. His own choices had led him here, so how does he respond? Well, nothing changed. He kept hitting the party scene and kept blasting the coaching staff any chance he got. On podcast, on his socials, wherever anyone would listen. He'd watch Miami drop games without him and somehow twist it into proof that he was right, that they needed him, that this was everyone else's fault. His ego only grew, and even when his dad texted looking for an explanation, Jordan read it, started typing, but never hit send. But slowly, as the weeks passed, something shifted. Chloe, who'd been attached to his hip since the beginning, was suddenly hard to pin down, dodging him on campus, going quiet on the phone, and then just gone entirely. And it was in that absence, that silence, that reflection finally came. Jordan had practically blown up his life, fractured his relationship with his dad, put everything on the line just to play receiver, only to throw it away the second he got the slightest taste of validation. He hardly recognized himself anymore, that doe-eyed kid beaming on his first college visit, to this, a frat chad with an ego the size of Florida. It's never easy to admit when you've lost yourself, and the road back is even harder, but you've got to start somewhere. He finally responded to his dad and stepped back onto the practice field with a fire he hadn't felt since the day he first hit campus. Miami's season was hanging on by a thread, and Jordan was itching to get back in the lineup to right his wrongs. Then one day after practice, coach called him in. They'd noticed the change, the way he was carrying himself, the way he was working. Teammates and coaches alike could see the switch had flipped, and they were ready to have him back on the field. Only it wouldn't be in the receiver room. The injury bug had torn through the locker room, and with the season on the line, coaches were desperate. You've played quarterback before, right? Jordan's heart sank. He knew exactly where this was going. For years, he'd been running from that shadow, and somehow it had never stopped following him. What would it mean to step back under center after everything he'd said, everything he'd fought for, every argument he'd had with his father about this exact thing? Could he even do it anymore if he wanted to? Jordan knew his team was in a desperate place, and he knew he was part of the reason why. And if this is what righting his wrongs looked like, if this was the price, then he had to pay it. Not for himself, but for his team. He spent the week buried in the playbook and surprised himself with how fast it all came back. Then it was time to win the craziest game of his career, or be the reason Miami's season went up in flames. And right before kickoff, his phone buzzed. It was his dad. Isaiah Knox had never once attended any of his son's college games. Not at Nevada, not at Cincinnati, but he was here now for this one. The one where Jordan was lining up under center, of course he was. But Jordan pushed all of it to the back of his mind. There was only one mission today. Don't embarrass himself. Thankfully, it was only Wake Forest, but that wasn't as comforting as coach intended it to be. On the road, Jordan lined up in the backfield for the first time since high school. He took his first drop back and immediately got sacked. Yeah, I think we all saw that coming. But Jordan bounced right back up, escaped the pocket, and surged forward for a 14-yard pickup. If he was going to win this game, it was going to be on his terms. Wake Forest had done their homework though, and they knew what Jordan was going to do even before he did. The Demon Deacons took the lead, and coach tried to help Jordan out with a run game, but sooner or later, he was going to have to air it out. On 2nd and 7, he settled in, planted his feet, and delivered. It was surprisingly on target, and the chains moved. Both sidelines, Jordan included, were shocked. But that was a read even a 4th grader could make, and it was clear these quick-hitting throws weren't going to be enough to win the game. Wake Forest got after him again, and the Hurricanes were facing a 3rd and forever. But Jordan didn't flinch. Flushed out of the pocket, he kept his eyes downfield, hit a juke, and picked up the first down with his legs. And that was basically the story of this one. His arm wasn't going to carry anybody anywhere, but his legs were doing something. By the middle of the 2nd quarter, he'd completed just 2 passes for 25 yards. Not exactly Heisman material. But Jordan was doing everything in his power to will this offense down the field, refusing to slide, throwing his body into contact, making coaches hold their breath every single carry. As Miami approached the end zone, Jordan took off up the middle, shed a defender with a shove that sent him straight to the dirt, and walked in for Miami's first touchdown of the day. It was perhaps the most unorthodox quarterbacking anyone had ever seen, but hey, 6 points is 6 points. Now, was he going to beat Ohio State or Texas? Yeah, not a chance. But every time he tucked it and ran, every time he somehow completed a pass, the sideline erupted. This team was rallying around him, not because he was good at this, but because he was trying. And sometimes that's enough. By game's end, Miami scraped out a 10-6 win, keeping their season barely alive. Jordan stood in the middle of that locker room and let it all wash over him. He'd let this team down, and today, in the most unlikely way imaginable, he'd shown up for them. And that's when he checked his phone and noticed a voicemail from his father. Hey Jordan, look, I'm here in the stands, and honestly, I came today hoping to watch you fall in love with being a quarterback again, but watching you put everything else aside and put yourself on the line like that, showing up for your team, I'm proud of you, son. Damn, who's cutting onions? Jordan listened to that message about 50 times that night, replaying the words he wasn't sure his father was even capable of saying. Thankfully, the quarterback experiment was over, and no one was more relieved than Jordan. Coaches were ready to reinsert him into the receiver room, but after everything that had gone down this season, trust wasn't just going to be handed back. He was starting all over again. Ahead of the next game, coaches gave him a very specific challenge. 6 catches, including one big one for 40+ yards. A tall order, but Jordan felt ready. Alright, taking on Duke, let's go. Let's go, Jordan. Jordan is ready to get out there. Coach, Jordan's ready when you are. Coach? Well, Miami won, I guess, but so much for that game day goal. It was clear Jordan wasn't going to be magically handed his spot back. There was no shortcut. No one was forgetting what happened. He was going to have to do the one thing he'd had to do every single year of his college career. Be patient. It wasn't until late in the fourth quarter of the following week that Jordan finally got called out there. His first snaps at receiver in months, and he knew he had to make them count. He flashed his footwork off the release, created separation like it was nothing, and reeled in a perfect throw, walking untouched into the end zone. Jordan Knox was back. It was the cleanest, most natural rep of his entire career. Smooth, effortless, and if you didn't know any better, you'd never believe this same guy was lining up under center 2 weeks ago. To Jordan, it didn't just feel good, it felt like coming home. And sure enough, ahead of the next matchup, he was given his shot at another position battle. He made quick work of it, and just like that, wide receiver 2 was reclaimed. Just in time for the final game of the regular season, a division matchup against Cal. Jordan got right to work, knowing every snap mattered. He hauled in a tough sideline catch, then came right back from the slot over the middle to move the chains. Then, on a quick out toward the boundary, he caught it, turned upfield, lowered his shoulder, and powered his way through 2 defenders before falling into the end zone. Miami was on the board first, and he quickly became the offense's safety valve, the guy they went to when nothing else was working. He always seemed to find space when no one else could. And coaches leaned fully into it, getting him the ball in creative ways, and Jordan kept paying them back in the end zone. When it was all said and done, over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a performance that reminded everyone, including Jordan himself, exactly what he was capable of when his head was straight. Miami closed out the regular season 9-3, ranked 15th in the country, just narrowly missing out on a playoff berth. And standing there in that moment, Jordan couldn't help but wonder, had he kept his head on straight all year, skipped the parties, answered his dad's calls, and stayed the course, could this team have gone the distance? Could he have? And right then, as Jordan replayed the season in his head, his phone lit up. It was a text from his father. "Amazing game today, son. Come on home. Let's get you ready for next year." And for the first time since he left for Nevada, Jordan Knox was going back to Vegas, back home. As he packed his things and looked out on the offseason ahead, something felt different. The imposter syndrome he'd been carrying around for 3 years, and the voice that said he'd never really be a receiver and that he was just a failed quarterback playing pretend, was gone. He was a wide receiver, and a great one at that. And it only took him 3 years, 3 different programs, a toxic situationship, and a suspension to finally believe it. But he believed it now. Stats weren't the goal anymore. Next year was his last shot, and Jordan Knox had every intention of making it count. Senior year, the last ride is up next.